All right, so what we did last time is we set up some basic skinning. A lot of it needs to be cleaned up, you know? So for example, things like this. So using that same NG Skins tool here, let's open that up. We can start to look at the different parts of the body, right? So we have this mesh selected. And I know that I don't want this part of the foot controlled by anything other than the L ball foot, right? So I'm going to select left ball foot, paint, and just holding B I can scale that up and I can just start pushing that stuff back. So it's important that you start to create these sort of like looking at it in more of a skinning fashion. Sometimes these things don't, you have to kind of change the angle and stuff, but let's try that again. There we go. So something like that. The other thing is like in here, I would like it to be controlled a lot more by her shin than, so here's like knee, which is this right here. So I'm going to paint that in a little bit. And notice I have intensity at 1, and then there's my brush radius, which can be controlled by B. So just kind of shifting this stuff over to the left knee. This should really all be controlled by the left hip, right? So I'm kind of going in here, pushing all this stuff over a little bit. Painting a little bit more up here. Just filling this out. Now if I go down to right hip, just cleaning that up. So that gives you a pretty good idea of where I'm going with this next. So you just kind of go through, clean all this stuff up to see how it looks. I like to do those test animations. And the cleanup process actually goes way into, for me, animating as well, because I'm going to take this into a game engine, and I'll show you all how to do that too. All right, so let's move this back. Well, actually, let's clean this up down here. Let's find our toe. Now, what's really neat about this is you shouldn't feel like you are stuck in any way. Like, like, oh, I have to get this perfect the first time. Because, like I said, when I start to do like a walk cycle, I'll start to notice subtle issues in the skinning there. And I always go back and clean that up too. All right, let's get this in here too. And I recommend it'll save you a lot of shoulder and wrist pain. Getting a tablet to help you with this painting process. It's a lot nicer to just sort of move. All right, let me teach you something a little bit more advanced. Let's take a look at creating a hand controller, and let's start with this thumb here. So what I'd like to do is add an attribute here, which does thumb close. So let's go to modify, add attribute here, and I'm just going to name this L underscore thumb underscore close. And my min is 0 and my max is 10 here. And we're going to go with an integer, and I'm going to hit add. Now you'll notice it's there, right? Now remember we have this under animation, we have our keys, and we want to do our set-driven keys. So let's see, set-driven key set, right? Let's do that one more time. Key, set-driven key. We want our options box here. Now I want this to be my driver, just like I did with the foot, and I want that L thumb close. Now what I'm the driven here is actually going to be this joint, the knuckle joint, and what I want to do is do something like this where it closes off like that. And again, we'll have to clean up the hand a little bit. So I'm going to select those two joints and I'm going to load those as driven. So I'm going to select both of these, and I'm actually going to select all 3 keys at this point. And the reason for that is because when the thumb folds over to make a fist, you're actually going to have to take into account all 3 of those. So with this selected, right off the bat, I know it's at 0, and there's all 3 of those. I'm just going to go ahead and hit key. and these are selected, these three. So right at 0 for my L thumb close, we're at 0. If we key that, you'll notice that's at 0. So I'm going to go ahead and make this a 10 and hit enter. Now nothing happened because we haven't set anything. So I'm going to hit Q, select both of these. I'm going to hit E and I'm going to rotate them in. And I'm just going to sort of like shape that out a little bit like a fist would. See that? So something like that. Now these fingers will fold underneath, so I'm going to give myself a little bit of space. Now I'm going to hit key again. Let's see if that worked. So on 0, that thumb is all the way out, and then on 10, it folds underneath. Now, what's cool about this process is notice that I got some really ugly geometry here. But if I go back and open this up, if I select this L thumb 0, 1, I want that to control more of this area in here, right? So I'll select this, hit paint, and I'll look for that L thumb 0, 1, right? And as I start to paint that, you'll notice I don't want too much of that. So actually what I want to do is really the L palm, which I think I named it. Yeah, here we go. L palm is what I really want to control most of that. So down here, I'm going to take my intensity and make it half. Just start sculpting this out for my palm. Kind of pulling that in a little bit. Just the areas that sort of surround the thumb to kind of give me a little bit more smoothness. Then I'm going to jump to L thumb 1. Oops. And I know there's a way to turn off the, there we go, something like that. Makes it a little bit easier to see. I'm also going to turn off joints. Right, so, and as you begin to build this out, here's L thumb 1, right? So kind of trying to find a nice even ground. L thumb 2, L thumb 1 is there. Let's check out smooth for a minute. What that'll do is that smooths out between the palm and the thumb. There we go. That'll help out a lot because it was getting kind of ugly in there. Notice that it's turning like a gray, so it's only going about 50% to smooth between those two joints. So that's looking pretty good. All right, let's test that. I like the way that looks. So we get something like that. Not too bad. All right, let's do our pointer finger. So let's turn those joints back on. And I'm going to go up here, Windows, or modify, add attribute here. And I'm just going to name this pointer. And really there was no thing of me putting L in there because we already automatically know that this is the left side. So I'm going to just make this a pointer, an integer min 0, and then a max of 10. I'm going to head and add that as well. And I'm going to make this, keep this as my driver, but I need to update that. So let's just hit load driver again. There's my pointer finger. Now I want to select, same sort of process, right? Let's select this and this. I'm going to hit Q. So I selected both of those joints, and those are going to be load driven. And selecting both of these, I'm going to do the same thing with my rotation here. And I'm going to let those be my, I'm going to key those at 0. And I already know that this is automatically set to 0. So let's go ahead and set this to 10. And with both of these selected, I'm going to hit E, and I'm going to rotate that in and down. So just kind of making my fist there. Again, don't worry too much about that. It'll get cleaned up. All right, so let's select, let's hit key on that, and so that way we can test this. So if I select both of these and I scroll to 0, it expands out. If I take it to 10, now on 10, what I can do here, I'm going to do that, I'm going to just sort of implement that same smoothing function at halfway. So this joint is called L pointer 1. So let's go ahead and find our L pointer 1 here. And let's expand this up a little bit here. And I'm going to hit paint and just kind of smooth between these two. You know what, let's really bring this up. Give me a little bit more control. And I actually want to go ahead and do add, and because I want this to be a little bit controlled a little bit more between, um, let's do replace here. See how it's given a little bit more between pointer 1 here. And then let's go back to smooth. Crank this up. It's really smooth between those two joints. Yeah, it's looking pretty good. Not too bad. And then for the tip here, let's go ahead and also let's put that thumb back a little bit. It's in my way. All right, let's hit paint, and I'm going to grab L pointer 2 and really make sure that nice and smoothed out. Now I might clean this up even more if, smooth that out a little bit more, if I was going to do any close-ups of the hands. So for now, let's take a look at that. Looks pretty good. All right, I'm going to go ahead and end this video here. What I'll do on my own is just do the rest of these fingers.